From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land. That'd be noon to 3 p.m. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice. Now, I don't know how this is actually supposed to be pronounced, so bear with me here. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. Or in some manuscripts, Eli, Eli, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Remember, in the languages of the time, the word for God would have been Elohim or something like that. So he's probably trying to say Elohim or something like that. I'm guessing he didn't sound very clear because they don't seem to understand what he's saying. So apparently, after having been on the cross for 6 hours and all that had happened, his voice wasn't very clear because they don't seem to understand what he's saying. When some of those standing there heard this, they said, he's calling Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a stick, and offered it to Jesus to drink. Now, we'll find out in one of the other Gospels that Jesus actually says, I'm thirsty. So this is a response to Jesus' apparent request for a drink. This is a typical Roman soldier's drink, by the way. The rest said, now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him. But when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. It could be that he asked for this drink to clear his throat somewhat so that he could utter his last two phrases. The loud voice, we'll read from the other Gospels, is, it is finished. And then he also says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Again, you don't get any of this from any one Gospel. You have to put all the Gospel accounts together to get the full sequence of events here. Luke will say this. Jesus called out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When he had said this, he breathed his last. That's probably his last actual words. And then John says, later, knowing that all was now completed, and so the scriptures would be fulfilled, Jesus said, I am thirsty. And that's when they got the wine vinegar. And then when he had received the drink, Jesus said, it is finished. With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. So he probably asked for the drink, first of all, to fulfill the scriptures, knowing that all the scriptures had been fulfilled. So that all scriptures would be fulfilled. He probably asked for the drink so that he could make this loud cry and make it, I guess, easier to hear, since it seems as though his cry of, my God, why have you forsaken me, was not intelligible to the people standing around him, apparently. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. Now, let's go back to, my God, why are you forsaken me? We did this when we read it in Mark, and we're going to do it again here in Matthew. But this is from a psalm, Psalm 22. The same psalm which talked about the people dividing up his clothing. So we didn't read it in the last video. We saved it for this one, because we can just do it both at the same time. We're going to read this entire psalm, Psalm 22. We read it when we read through the book of Mark. We're going to read it again here. Because when Jesus says this, he's drawing, it's very similar. I've said before, anytime the New Testament quotes the Old Testament, you go back to the Old Testament, you look up that quote, and you really should not just look up that one sentence, like that one partial, whatever it is that they quote. You should look up the context surrounding that quote to see what the overall context of that part of the scriptures says. Especially true for the Psalms. When they bring up a psalm, you should go back and read that entire psalm, because they would have known those psalms. They would have had those psalms memorized. Everyone there, well, the Romans wouldn't have, but Jesus, the apostles, the priests, all the Jews there would have had every one of those 150 psalms memorized, probably from the time they were like 6. Okay, so they would have known those psalms backwards and forwards. And you say one line of any one of those psalms, and any of those Jews would have been able to recite that entire psalm from memory. And so when he says that, he's not just saying that one thing for the sake of saying that one thing. He's drawing your attention to that entire psalm. So we're going to go back and we're going to read that psalm. Psalm 22. For the director of music, to the tune of The Doe of the Morning, a psalm of David. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? So far from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer, by night, and I am not silent. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the praise of Israel. In you our fathers put their trust. They trusted, and you delivered them. They cried to you and were saved. In you they trusted and were not disappointed. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by men and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Yet you brought me out of the womb. You made me trust in you even at my mother's breast. From birth I was cast upon you. From my mother's womb you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Many bulls surround me. Strong bulls of Bashan encircle me. Roaring lions, tearing their prey, open their mouths wide against me. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart has turned to wax. It has melted away within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. Maybe that's why he couldn't speak very well when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? You lay me in the dust of death. Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evil men has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them and cast lots of my clothing. But you, O Lord, be not far off. O my strength, come quickly to help me. Deliver my life from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs, the unclean, scavenging animals. Rescue me from the mouth of the lions. Save me from the horns of the wild oxen. I will declare your name to my brothers. In the congregation I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you descendants of Jacob, honor him. Revere him, all you descendants of Israel. For he has not despised or disdained the suffering of his afflicted one. Remember in Isaiah we read he was stricken, smitten, and afflicted? He has not hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help. From you comes the theme of my praise in the great assembly. Before those who fear you, I will fulfill my vows. The poor will eat and be satisfied. They will seek the Lord and will praise those who seek the Lord. They will praise him, and may your hearts live forever. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations will bow down before him. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. All the rich of the earth will feast and worship. All who go down to the dust will kneel before him, those who cannot keep themselves alive. Posterity will serve him. Future generations will be told about the Lord. They will proclaim his righteousness to a people yet unborn, for he has done it. So it starts off as a psalm of lament and moaning and terror and fear and despair, but it becomes, what are you doing, Timber? Timber, what are you doing? But it becomes a psalm of triumph and exaltation by the end. And when Jesus had cried out in a loud voice, again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split. The tombs broke open, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs, and after Jesus' resurrection, They went into the holy city and appeared to many people. Now, this is one of the most mysterious sentences in all the Bible. Nothing else in the New Testament refers to this event, this partial resurrection event here. And so I don't know what to make of it. My guess is that, okay, I'm going to assume that it happened, okay. My guess is that it's basically like Lazarus was raised in the book of John. In that I think these were probably fairly recently dead people whose bodies had not fully decomposed yet. They were, remember, they had a multi-stage burial process where they would first wrap the body up and put it in a tomb on a shelf, in a family tomb. This is what happens to Jesus here in a moment. And then after a period of time, a year or so, after the body had decomposed, they would go back in there and they would gather up the bones after the flesh had decomposed and put them into a box, and then put that box in a separate place. These would probably be people who had died recently enough that their bodies had not yet been gathered into bone boxes. So they would have been fairly recently dead. And they probably are like Lazarus in that they were raised back into normal physical life and would have died again at some point later on. They would have obviously been holy people, it says that. So they would have been believers, they would have been genuine followers of God. Obviously this is before the establishment of the church, so they would have been genuine followers of God according to the Old Covenant, which was active at the time. They would have presumably all become Christians after the church is founded a few weeks later. And they presumably all would have gone to die again. Christ is the first fruits of those raised from the dead, so he got his resurrection body first. So these people I don't think are in their resurrection bodies here. I think they were raised back to normal physical life. They probably were relatives of people in the city. They probably went, so when they came into the city, apparently after Jesus' resurrection, they went to people that they knew. And apparently were fairly recently dead. I'm assuming these would have been people whose bodies had not yet been gathered up into bone boxes, so they would have been fairly recently dead. This sequence of events doesn't necessarily have to all take place in order, as we said before with the book of Matthew. So it could be, it sounds like they got raised and then they were just hanging around in the tombs for a day or two before Jesus was getting back up. But I don't know if necessarily that's how it happened. They could have all gathered together outside the city and then gone into the city later. I don't know. I wish we had more information about this. I have no idea really how to take any of this, but that's my best explanation for what was going on there. I think these would have, like Jesus himself, whose resurrection appearances apparently were limited to those who already followed him and believed him. These people probably would have appeared to their friends and family members who were believers, like they had been. And I presume that they would have gone on to die physical deaths later on in time at some point. It could be that they ascended to heaven or they were brought up to heaven when Jesus was, and that's just never mentioned anywhere. But my guess is that they were like Lazarus and that they were raised to physical life and ended up going on to die a physical death again at some point later on. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified, and they exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." Many women were there, watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. As evening approached, we'll read more about these women in Luke and in John. Mark and Matthew don't put a lot of attention on them. Mark and Matthew both don't introduce these women until the very end, but we will see them more prominently featured in the other two remaining Gospels. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took, now we'll read in John that Joseph has a helper, a guy named Nicodemus, who is only mentioned in John. Joseph is mentioned in all the Gospels, but we'll read in John that he had a partner named Nicodemus who was helping him. Joseph, and these are both members of the Sanhedrin. They were both members of the council who voted to put Jesus to death, but they had both dissented from that vote. They had not agreed with that decision. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. That's where Isaiah 53 is fulfilled, in that he was assigned a tomb with the rich. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, the Mary of mother of James and Joseph, were sitting there opposite the tomb. The next day, the one after Preparation Day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," Pilate answered. "Go and make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting a guard. This is a Roman guard now. This is not temple police. These are Roman soldiers, and the tomb is sealed with a Roman seal. Now, the seal would not have been difficult to break. Okay, the difficulty is not in breaking the seal. The difficulty is in there's no way to, if the seal is broken, there's no way to cover the fact that it's been broken. Okay, and if it's been broken, then that crime is a crime worthy of death. So if you break the seal, it's not hard to break the seal, but if you do, then you will be caught and executed for it. So that's the point of the seal. It's a wax seal they would have put on both ends of the tomb with like a rope or something in between. Again, not hard to break. It'd be sort of like quarantine tape today. It wouldn't actually be difficult to break, but you're not supposed to because it's against the law. And the soldiers who were there to guard the tomb would have been Roman soldiers, not temple police. So he's in the tomb. He's in Joseph's tomb, his own new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. And he's going to be there for a day or so, a full day, day and a half. And it's the Sabbath day, so they can't do anything to prepare him further. He got a rushed burial. He died on 3 o'clock or thereabouts in the afternoon, and they had to take him off the cross and bury him before sundown. So they only had a couple of hours to do that in. And so they did a rush job, and so they did not fully prepare the body for burial, which is why the women are going to come back on Sunday, the day after the Sabbath day. They can't do it on the Sabbath day. They're going to come back on Sunday after the Sabbath day to do that, and that's when they get the news that he has risen. We'll get to that next time.